and I wanted to write a film set in North Norfolk, and it very quickly became apparent that he was the man to play the leading role, for two reasons. One, because he's local and he loved the idea of proper local film companies doing something in the region, which is pretty tough actually, because we don't have Screen East anymore, we don't have much in the way of television for drama, and also because I wanted to see a side of Roger which perhaps people haven't always seen. You know, they all love him as Trigger, and he's a great comic actor, but of course he was much more than that, and I felt that it was really appropriate that he should have a role which stretched him as a leading man rather than the sort of comic support.
Right. And he was an incredible actor. We know about his acting skills, but tell us a little bit more about the man himself. What's he like? Well,
he was delightful. He was very eccentric, very much as he is in the film in a way, which is kind of how I suppose I wrote it, which is kind of grumpy on occasions, but very endearingly grumpy, you know. And the thing about Roger, I think he was a very passionate man, very laid back, but if he got cross about something, it was because it meant something, and I think that carried through his whole life. You know, he was a very political person, and he was very good at rallying people to causes. So I mean, he was a well-rounded person, I think.
And how should we remember him, do you think?
Well, we're going to remember him, aren't we, for Trigger and also Vicar of Dibley. Yeah. But you know, in a way, I mean, it sounds slightly sort of weird, but you know, in our little film is a way I think one would like to remember him, really strutting his stuff as an actor, becoming, you know, being somebody who was a much broader than just a comic actor, you know, and you know, he played Shakespeare. Yeah. He did. I saw him, and poetry. Yeah, I mean,
so he had so multifaceted, multi-skilled.
Huge number of things that he was very keen on.
Yeah. All right. Well, Tony, thanks for coming in and telling us a little bit more about the man.
Yes.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Well, next, how Formula One technology is helping people beat the bulge.
Engineers from the Mclaren motor racing team have taken a system normally used to collect information about cars on the racetrack and have turned it into a way of monitoring the way our body burns through energy.
A pilot scheme has just been launched in Suffolk, with doctors and researchers hoping it could be a new weapon in the battle against obesity. Serena Sandhu reports.
For racing drivers like Lewis Hamilton, keeping fit and healthy is an essential part of the job, and there's a team of people helping him do exactly that. In Stowmarket today, these gym goers were working up a sweat, and their weight loss was also being aided by a team of Formula One engineers. But how? The Mclaren F1 team are using telemetry technology that's normally used to collect data about the racing cars to instead monitor how many calories a person burns throughout the day. It's being trialled on 90 patients at the Stowhealth GP surgery.
You're attaching a Bluetooth diode and electrode to a person's chest, and then that measures heartbeat and pulse rate and calculates using an algorithm calorific burn. This device then talks to this, which is kept by a person in their pocket, and this will then calculate how many calories are burnt throughout the day, and this information is then sent to a server at Mclaren, which then releases the information on a web portal.
In England, most people are overweight or obese. That includes 61.9% of all adults. 28% of children are also classed as overweight. Obesity costs the NHS more than £5 billion every year. It's hoped this study will encourage participants to make healthier lifestyle choices.
This kind of technology will actually show you what you're doing to your body and be hugely helpful to the medical professionals who are trying to treat you.
Who would have thought that the technology used to monitor the success of a racing car could one day help monitor the health of a person? Serena Sandhu, ITV News, Stowmarket.
Now, a new report out says house prices across the region are on the increase.
Yes, a report from the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors shows that there has also been more house sales than at any point since 2009.
And in further good news for the housing market, the trend looks set to continue. Luke Farrington has been to Essex to find out more.
No one could doubt it, the economy's on the up. And if you're selling a house, 2014 could be a good year. According to the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, house sales are at the highest level in more than 4 years. They say 40% of surveyors in the region reported a rise in house prices. Sales were up by 21.3% compared to 2009. More than two-thirds expect the trend to continue. It's good news for Bereford's estate agents in Chelmsford. They've noticed the trend too.
Buyer registrations are up 27% compared to this time last year. Offers accepted up a similar level. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of confidence out there at the moment.
With the base rate of interest at an historic low and inflation down, confidence is improving. The government's 95% mortgage scheme means that more people can now borrow money. There are more people able to buy a house, but there simply aren't any more houses. Supply is outstripping demand, and that means only one thing: an increase in prices. Good news if you're selling, bad news if you're trying to get a foot on the ladder. A glimmer of hope though, house building is now at its highest rate for a decade. Luke Farrington, ITV News, Chelmsford.
It's exactly 6:15. You're watching ITV News in the east of the Anglia region.
And still to come your way this evening.
The £1 million project to tell the tale of the American servicemen and women who've served their country in our region.
First it was a book, then a TV drama, and now it's a new stage play coming to our region. We talked to the author of the novel Birdsong.
Some beefy shower clouds on their way. If you've not been hit yet, expect some heavy downpours later on this evening. I'll have all the details at the end of the programme.
But before all of that, a grandfather from Colchester has won his battle to get Essex County Council to pay for damage to his car caused by potholes.
Frank Cattrall wanted £500 for the repairs to his vehicle, and when the council refused, he took them to court and won. Kate Prout reports.
In the cold light of day, Frank Cattrall is able to avoid the potholes on Greenstead Road. But on a wet, dark evening last April, he wasn't so lucky.
The suspension on here, the complete suspension arm and spring on this tyre.
And so followed a 9-month battle with Essex County Council that ended in court.
All I wanted basically is for the roads to be safe for the road user. I'm a road user, there are cyclists, there are motorcyclists. If a cyclist had hit that, they'd probably be dead, you know. And it's no excuse for them not to be able to do these things.
The court ruled in Frank's favour after he discovered the council knew about the hole 3 months earlier but had done nothing about it. An insurance firm recently put the national annual repair bill on pothole-damaged cars at £730 million. As you can probably see, this road is littered with holes. At the moment they're not too bad, but all it's going to take is a heavy snowfall or a series of frosts, and it's very likely they're going to open up all over again. Essex County Council wouldn't talk to us on camera but sent a statement saying, last year 85% of highways compensation claims were successfully defended with no compensation paid. The defects in Greenstead Road from September and October have since been repaired. An act that Frank caught on camera.
What they were asking us to do was to actually weave past these things and drive in a dangerous manner. To me, this is just absolutely ridiculous. Why not just fill the holes up?
As council budgets continue to be cut, it seems we're all going to have to drive just that little bit more carefully. Kate Prout, ITV News, Colchester.
Well, on to sport now, and the Norwich City manager Chris Hughton says he's determined to turn the club's fortunes around despite mounting pressure to keep his job. The Canaries play their first Premier League home game since the turn of the year against Hull on Saturday, and Hughton believes his squad has the ability to fight for survival despite going 8 games without a win.
They're motivated to do well. There's no doubt about that. And what you have to expect is that when you have a period that you're not getting the results that you want, you expect a team to be galvanised and look forward to that next game. And that's what I see in this group.
Yeah, the next game being Hull City on Saturday. Meanwhile, Norwich's FA Youth Cup winning captain Cameron McGeehan could soon make his professional league debut in the conference. Northern Ireland under-21 international Cameron has joined the conference leaders Luton Town on a month's youth loan. Now Norwich say the move will help his development.
There's a boost for Ipswich Town with 4 players back for their latest game in the Championship. Among them is striker Daryl Murphy. He was rated doubtful earlier this week for the trip to Millwall, but has now recovered from a thigh injury.
Right, Aidan's here with the weather shortly, but before that, let's head over to the national news team and head over to Mark.
A woman tells the trial of Coronation Street's Bill Roach he allegedly raped her twice when she was a teenager. The jury hears claims she kept quiet about the actor for decades because she blamed herself. A widow's anger as she tells an inquest how 4 999 calls failed to raise an ambulance as her husband's life slipped away. And Del Boy leads tributes to Roger Lloyd Pack, the actor who played Trigger, who has died, aged 69. Join Julie Etchingham and me at 6:30.
Yes, more tributes to Roger Lloyd Pack there. Now, next from us, they left their homes, their families and their country to serve in England. Now, the story of thousands of ordinary American servicemen and women who came to East Anglia during the Second World War is to be told.
The Imperial War Museum in Duxford has been awarded a grant from the Heritage Lottery Fund to tell their stories and give the museum's American aircraft a new lease of life. Claire McGlasson reports.
Standing silent and still, a roll call of American aircraft serving their final mission here at the Imperial War Museum at Duxford. Once a common sight in the skies here in the east. Their engine sound as distinctive as the accents of the American crew posted here so far from home. The Imperial War Museum thinks it's time their stories were told, and thanks to a grant from the Heritage Lottery Fund of just shy of £1 million, that project can begin.
Really allow our visitors to have a new impression and a new focus on some of these iconic objects in the collection. We want them to look at them through the stories of the people who flew them, who built them, or who were on the receiving end of them, or even the people of East Anglia who remember them from 70 years ago.
Much of the work will focus on the Roger Freeman collection, 15,000 photographs which will be put online for the first time. And the museum hopes that members of the public will share their memories to help uncover the fascinating stories of the people they show.
Yeah, they were all taken in wartime. So that means that these are photographs of real people under sometimes really intense pressure. That means they're also incredibly moving because a lot of the photographs show people who didn't survive the war, who maybe a couple of weeks after the photograph was taken were killed in combat. And that means that the whole collection can be very powerful and very moving.
Those memories will be added to a new exhibition. Part of the grant will be spent on the aircraft themselves. All 20 will be taken out of the hangar for conservation work, and that will be quite a feat when you consider that the B-52 alone weighs 80 tonnes. Claire McGlasson, ITV News.
Some wonderful photos there. Now then, in a few minutes, another chance for you to enter our First World War Centenary School Report project, so do grab a pen and paper.
But before that, the novel Birdsong, written by Sebastian Faulks, who studied at Cambridge and published in 1993. If you've read it, you'll know it was set amid the horrors of the First World War.
Well, after the book came radio and television versions, and now a new stage adaptation has arrived in the year we mark 100 years since the outbreak of the war.
The UK tour begins next month and will come to Bury St Edmunds in April and Colchester in June. Derek Johnson caught up with Birdsong author Sebastian Faulks to talk about the play and why the production comes at a very special time.
Birdsong, it's a love story, but it's also about one man's journey through the First World War, the battlefields of France and Belgium, taking in the Somme. Why did you want to write about that originally?
I wrote the book 20 years ago, and it was a time when I felt that what people had experienced during the First World War had been forgotten or put to one side, rather. And yet I felt that the experiences that they had were not only extreme and extraordinary in themselves, but were capable of teaching us something about who we are and about what humanity is.
It's also about a part of the war that I think people didn't know a lot about before the book came out. The tunnels underneath the trenches where soldiers would lay mines, listen for troop movements. What drew you to that subject?
thought it was very important that Birdsong, the novel, should bring something new. And this idea that with the two trenches maybe 100, 150 yards apart, there was a second war going on underneath, even more intense in even more confined static circumstances, seemed to me a sort of symbolic really of the futility and an insanely intense nature of the war.
The stage adaptation is going to be watched by audiences in the centenary year, 100 years since Britain joined the war, the outbreak of the war.
The touring production of Birdsong the play is one of the things that is not an official thing. It's not. I'm not saying this is what really happened, this is what you need to understand, but it's a drama based on a novel. But I hope that it has a deeper historical truth behind it, and I hope that it's able to make a contribution to the understanding and the commemoration of these events.
There's a debate going on right now about the role of the British generals in the Western Front, whether they fought the war badly, whether it was a senseless slaughter out there. What's your view on that? Because it is a hot topic.
It is a hot topic, and well, my view basically is it's very good that you have a Secretary of State for Education who's sufficiently knowledgeable about history to have a view, and a counterpart Shadow equally another view. And it's very good to have this debate out on the front pages. This is where we want history to be.
Were lives lost needlessly, I suppose, is the question?
Probably, yes, but the circumstances were extremely difficult, and it's not completely a sort of black and white picture, and the idea that all officers were sort of cowards who hid 25 miles behind the line is completely untrue. Officers actually suffered a disproportionate number of losses per capita. So most of these young men walked forward holding a simple handgun and were killed within a few seconds. So the idea that the officers led these brave men or sent them rather than leading them is completely untrue. Whether it could have been conducted better, nobody really knew, probably in certain circumstances, but once they got tanks, once they got movement, the thing was much better conducted and finished relatively quickly.
And as promised, another quick reminder of how your school can get involved in our special project to mark the centenary of the First World War.
We want children to find a local story about the war and then, if selected, to report on it for ITV News Anglia.
Now, it's called School Report, and the details of how to apply, you'll find them all on our website at itv.com/Anglia. It's open to all schools as well, so that's children aged 5 all the way up to 18. And we do need to receive your idea by the end of the month, so do get cracking.
Right, time now for the weather, and Aidan is here, as you can see. Now, Amanda was in the studio yesterday talking about how mild it is for the time of year. What's it all about?
Spring-like.
Well, yes, in a sense, the mild weather has been a byproduct of how stormy the Atlantic has been. And do you know how bad luck often comes in threes?
Oh, yes. I do.
Well, this winter we've had 3 things, the way I see it, that have caused that stormy weather. First of all, very strong temperature gradients across the Atlantic, really warm Atlantic and cold Canadian Arctic. That's led to some very strong storms. Also, the winds 15 miles above the equator, a cycle called the quasi-biennial cycle.
Oh, I love your big words.
Yes. It's every 14 months the winds switch from easterly to westerly. At the moment they're westerly. That adds power to the jet stream. So that has coincided with that temperature contrast, and a final thing.
What was the third I've got to remember?
The final thing.
Temperature, heat,
even
and
further away, it's the sun. Every 11 years, the solar maximum occurs, where we get a lot of sunspots. All that energy comes in and adds to the jet stream. All 3 factors.
That's brilliant as well. Right. So is spring now here for good? Are the DAFs about to go up and that'll be it? Or?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these factors start to decline, and actually we'll see the jet stream become less strong and possibly some colder weather. Let's take a look.
Anglian Home Improvements, sponsors of ITV Anglia Weather.
Hello, brace yourselves for some lively weather tonight as heavy showers tumble across the region, accompanied by some gusty winds, particularly near the coast. Now, this is the picture at the moment. We've got heavy showers waiting out towards the southwest to pile in through this evening, all rotating around low pressure. And this setup is what forecasters call a returning polar maritime airflow. Polar because it's coming all the way from the pole, maritime because that cold polar air crosses a warm sea, leading to the development of some heavy showers, and returning because it comes down past the UK and then comes back up at us again from the southwest, picking up some warmth, meaning it's mild but very showery. So those showers already starting to arrive now this evening, and they'll become widespread overnight. The heaviest of them down towards Essex, but even Norfolk will see one or two pass through. Could be a rumble of thunder, but there'll be gusty winds for many places, particularly along the Essex and Suffolk coast there. As we go through the night, those showers will eventually ease, and by tomorrow morning they'll be confined to parts of the coast there towards Essex, maybe just the odd one lingering inland, but many places drier and brighter. And then through the day, we'll keep the dry and bright weather by and large, but there is some rain that's likely to come in later in the day from the south. Some uncertainty about this, but it could lead to a wet end to the day for Essex.
Anglian Home Improvements, sponsors of ITV Anglia Weather.
Head still ringing with all that weather information. I'll be tested later. Dear, oh dear. Right, before we go, a quick reminder, there'll be plenty of political discussion later tonight in Anglia Late Edition.
Yes, Alistair Stewart hosts the programme, which focuses on migrant workers coming to work in the region, plus the question of our relationship with Europe, and that is at 11:35 this evening.
And that is it from us. I'll be back with an update at 10:30. But from everyone here for this evening, thank you very much for watching.
Yeah, have a lovely evening. Bye-bye. Good evening, welcome to ITV News Anglia.
Here's a look at this evening's main stories.
The home where a sickening paedophile masterminded the abuse of children thousands of miles away. Tonight, a warning to other would-be internet offenders.
A blaze at a warehouse near Milton Keynes. The flames are out, but structural damage means it's too dangerous for fire teams to go inside.
Plus, reversing the trend to move overseas. The firms here that are bringing manufacturing jobs back to Britain.
And the dog's home that's turning visitors away because so many of them don't even want to adopt a dog. Hello from Jonathan and from me. Welcome to the programme.
Yes, good evening. First tonight, the international paedophile ring smashed following a routine police visit to a Kettering home.
When officers in Northamptonshire examined a computer belonging to registered sex offender Timothy Ford, it began a series of events which would lead them around the world to the abuse of children in the Philippines.
Well, today, the National Crime Agency revealed the full extent of an operation which has spanned 12 countries and led to 29 arrests. Russell Hookey has the report.
From his small bungalow in Kettering, Timothy Ford would pay to watch boys as young as 6 being abused in the Philippines. He'd wire money to families desperate for cash, ordering them to carry out depraved acts on the youngsters, which he'd view via the internet. From the comfort of his home in Northamptonshire, Ford would routinely witness sickening crimes on the other side of the world and encourage other paedophiles to do the same.
There is a school of thought that this man was looking at the live abuse of children on the other side of the world. Our view is quite simply this: he creates a market. People like him create a market for the abuse of children and young people. He is equally as culpable and equally responsible in my eyes as if he was in the room undertaking the physical act himself.
It was in May 2012 that a routine check on Ford's house, following information from the public, sparked an investigation by Northamptonshire Police. In August that year, the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre began identifying offenders and victims in the Philippines. 11 arrests followed there in October, and 15 victims were rescued, leading to a search of Ford's house in December 2012 and his subsequent arrest. In March last year, he was convicted of 23 offences and sentenced to 8.5 years in prison. Neighbours say the 52-year-old wheelchair user had lived in this bungalow since the 1980s. They say he was a quiet man who kept himself to himself and would often stay indoors using his computer. Some say they knew he was a paedophile. He'd been arrested and jailed a few years ago for possession of indecent images. Even so, they say they're stunned today to find out that he was such a key link in a paedophile ring which stretched right around the world.
When he went the first time, I didn't really know what he'd been for.
But when I read in this paper, a dangerous man, but that man who lives in that house across there, he got a young baby when he went for the first time, and he said to me, we don't want him in Burgh Street anymore.
Ford's story may be shocking, but it wasn't isolated. Since Operation Endeavour began, there have been 29 arrests across 12 countries, 17 of them here in the UK. Police here are still investigating 9 other people.
It's a growing crime that's spreading across the globe. You've got the growing access and availability of high-speed internet. You've got people around the world who demand and want to abuse children, and you've got families and children living desperate situations that are looking for ways to survive.
Cyber sex abuse is on the increase, say charities, because, as in this case, sex offenders are exploiting poverty in other countries. Quiet streets like this one can, all too easily, conceal crimes taking place thousands of miles away. Police say this case, though, should serve as a warning to sex offenders that the World Wide Web offers no hiding place from the law. Russell Hookey, ITV News, Kettering in Northamptonshire.
Well, earlier I spoke to Stephanie McCourt from the National Crime Agency, which led the investigation. She told me how significant a problem this kind of abuse was.
Well, since we have had the first operation for the UK, which is Operation Endeavour, there have been 3 further operations which have identified over 700 suspects around the world, over 100 of which have actually been here in the UK. So that's just over a year and a half's time. The National Crime Agency have identified this money. So prevalence, yes, this is an issue, and this is happening right here in the UK.
And it truly is a shocking crime. It's heinous, but some would say that we've created this lawless paedophiles' playground almost.
Well, the internet is a facilitation tool, and as any criminal will, paedophiles will use that tool to enable access to children in places that they otherwise wouldn't. But they need to be very clear. This crime is no less a crime because it's happening several, more than a few thousand miles away on the other side of the world. The impact and the effect that this has on the victims is real, it's severe, and as a result of that, we will do everything we can to identify, stop these people and bring them to justice.
So how do we start to solve this problem? I mean, you've got to get the balance right, haven't you? One option would be to perhaps introduce controls, but then you're limiting ordinary people's access.
Controls are effective to one degree, but when we're talking about live streaming specifically, law enforcement has a series of methods, and we work on a number of fronts to investigate offenders such as these. So it starts off actually in places like the Philippines itself. The National Crime Agency has an international child protection network, which means that we use the tools that we have to educate with the support and assistance of charities on the ground. We work with the statutory agencies, including the police, to ensure that their response to this sort of criminality is effective as possible, using the experience and the tactics that we're able to share with them. When we look a little bit closer at home, the National Crime Agency is using the benefit of all the expertise and resources that we have. So that's in terms of forensic, technical, and also the good relationships that we have with social networking sites, with internet service providers, and of course financial institutions. Working with these sorts of people, as well as foreign law enforcement agencies, as we did in Operation Endeavour, means that there is every chance and every likelihood, as has been proven, that we will be able to dismantle criminal networks, such as in Operation Endeavour, to make sure that they cannot continue to cause harm to children.
And can I ask how the 15 children are in this case?
The children that were rescued, aged 5 between 16 years old, are now in care. They don't any longer have access to the people don't have access to them who originally facilitated their abuse. Most importantly, they are now safe, and they will remain safe.
OK, Stephanie McCourt, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Well, next, a man accused of helping the killer, Joanna Dennehy, had warned she may murder one of her eventual victims, a court has heard. Dennehy has already admitted stabbing Kevin Lee, Lucas Slabozewski and John Chapman to death last year. Gary Stretch and Leslie Layton, both from Orton Goldhay, are on trial for helping Dennehy. Today, Cambridge Crown Court heard from a witness who said Stretch had told her Dennehy had threatened to kill Mr Lee in the days leading up to his murder.
A local radio presenter has been back at work this afternoon after being involved in a collision with a police car on his way to present this morning's breakfast show. Stuart Linnell, who presents on Radio Northampton, was due on air at 6 o'clock this morning. He was walking when the accident happened in the early hours in Abington Square near the station's studios. He was released from hospital and returned to work this afternoon.
Someone else in the wars is the Luton North MP Kelvin Hopkins, who's broken his left leg after slipping on some oil in a car park. The 72-year-old MP fell in the multi-storey car park at Luton train station as he went to get his car after returning from the Houses of Parliament. Mr Hopkins said his main problem now was getting around Parliament, where he walked several miles going to different meetings.
Next, firefighters have launched an investigation into a blaze which destroyed a warehouse in Newport Pagnell yesterday.
Buckinghamshire Fire and Rescue were still at the scene this morning, damping down the site in the Rennie Road area of the town.
The structure of the building has yet to be made safe, but